Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Cabin story number 1. Not sure if paranormal. Dad owns a casa. It roughly translates into cabin near the nicer parts of Tijuana. It's out in the middle of the desert, between Tijuana and El Paso, almost outside Tijuana actually, despite being in Mexico, and we all know the state of public safety in Mexico right now. It's actually a safe area. I do believe my dad pays off protection money to some cartel boss, or is at least on some good terms with a higher up, because nobody ever bothered us when vacationing there, even at the height of the Zeta violence spree and kidnappings. I was about 14 when this happened. It was about 2 days since we had come down from San Diego. Dad was drunk on tequila by the pool. Mom was sleeping in that day. So, I took out my dirt bike and went riding along the desert. I never went too far, but this time I wanted to try and jump a few dunes that was far away but still within sight of the casa. Besides, it was also near a neighboring village, small town, and I also had a lot of friends there. I had been having my fun there for a couple of hours, when I noticed that at the foot of one of the dudes sat an old lady in a white floral dress. Being a well-educated kid, I went down to check on her. Because this was the middle of the desert in the afternoon sun, and no place for no frail Abuelita. So I approached her and called out to her, and she immediately turned to me with the widest grin I ever saw. We chatted for a bit. I just wanted to know if she was okay, to be sitting out here in the sun for no reason, but the lady kept dodging my questions and just calling me, mijo, and saying how healthy I looked and your usual grandma nonsense. Since I thought she was senile at this point, I wanted to read back home. But now Abuelita had hooked her arm through mine and was trying to turn me around in some unspecified direction, telling me she was going to fix me some snacks. Then out of nowhere I realize little Abuelita here is dragging me towards a shack. Where did this shack come from? I'm positive it was not there as I rode in earlier, and I did not see it anywhere. I'm positive I actually rode through the area the shack was. So I tried to wrench myself free, but I couldn't. I told Abuelita to let me go, to which she kept saying, come, over and over again in a monotone. When we were about 30 feet away from the shack entrance, I was able to pull my arm free and book it to the bike. I maybe ran about 100 feet to where the bike was. I actually sprinted. I was thinking this was some cartel shit and that I was going to end up in the desert without a liver. I jumped on the dirt bike, and as I turned to look, fucking Abuelita is coming at me fast. Not running. She was walking stupidly fast, head held down and cane held in front of her. I mean, when I say fast, I mean fast. I noticed she was making a low hissing noise, so I fucking speed off out of that place and left. When I reached the casa, I decided to turn back, and since I had lost sight of Abuelita, tried to do a wide circle around the area to see what was what. After all, how the fuck is some old Mexican lady going to hope to run after a bike? I was doing a wide circle around the dunes, coming around a curve that would soon show me the shack she tried to drag me to. When the area came into view, the shack had disappeared. Gone, nada, desaparecido, missing. It was not there. Scratching my fucking head, I turn to the side and I see fucking Abuelita just dead sprinting in my direction from the fucking desert that was fucking empty a minute ago. I felt like the fucking Ghost Rider, legging it out of there as fast as I could on my little dirt bike. I was genuinely so goddamn afraid I didn't even return to the casa. It was in the same desert after all. I rode all the way down to the villa, to a bar my dad used to frequent, and used to call both my dad and La Policia. La Policia never bothered to show. Kid calls about weird old lady in the desert. Who the fuck is going to come? Dad showed up 2 hours later, hungover, not to pick me up but to drink some more. On the bright side, the bouncers, Charuto and Oso, were sympathetic and told me that there are still people in Mexico that believe in las brujas, witches, and occult powers. It was in their culture, and while they couldn't decide whether they believe it or not, they explained that there was in fact a local legend about a bruja who lived out in the desert and would fetch children and teenagers for torture and harvesting their organs. Oso himself said he had seen a lot of weird crap out in the desert wilderness, and told me to avoid those areas until I had become an hombre, for which brujas had no interest in besides trying to seduce.
A lot of Mexican people do believe in witches, Satanism, and the occult. Now here in the States, if you tell me a story like that, I will just shrug it off, but in Mexico, it's a different story. There is something about Mexico, whether it's the land, the location, or the people. But things are different there. I was on vacation in Mexico with wife about a month ago. Now the wife family lives on a town on the outskirts of the city which they call a rancho, which translates to ranch in English. Very pretty place. No internet and running water stopped after 5 or 6 p.m. Nothing to do except hang out and talk to people and go out to places and see people. One day we stopped by her grandmother's house for dinner since we were going to leave in a few days. Now, I already know that her grandmother was known as a white witch around that town and other surrounding towns, which basically means she uses herbs and prayers to heal and help people. I've already heard some stories about her, and she does this thing with an egg on me that's supposed to clean me and protect me when she comes to the US to visit. While eating delicious dinner, she says she is expecting company at 7 p.m. Says she has to cleanse someone. Curious, I ask what it's about, and she tells me a man in town was pursued by a witch. She tells me this guy was sitting on his porch outside around 6 p.m. talking to his girlfriend. When he was done talking to her, he realized he was sitting on his dad's chair that normally is under a tree by the corner where his dad liked to sit at in the mornings. He takes the chair and walks it to the tree to leave it there, and as he places the chair under the tree, he feels a presence staring him down from the top of the tree. He looks up and sees the tree has no leaves, only branches, and sees what looks like a human wearing a dark tattered robe with a distorted face perched on the tree. Frightened, he takes off to his house as he feels gusts of wind creeping up behind him. He makes it to his house and runs to his bedroom. Expecting whatever that was to break in, he grabs a machete and stands by a corner of his room. Whatever that was didn't follow him inside, but he could hear what sounded like a giant bird flying around his house, whistling at him as it flew by his room window. Eventually the thing leaves him alone, and he sits in his room awake all night with that machete until his dad comes home next morning. Dad takes him to his house where he calls grandma and sets up that appointment at 7. Now she tells me that seeing a witch is one thing, but being followed, pursued, or teased by one is an entirely different scenario. Apparently, the witch wants something from him now and won't leave him alone until she has it. Judging from how the witch was whistling and giggling, laughing, makes it seem as the witch wants to mate with him, forcefully. A witch could change herself to look beautiful to seduce a guy only to change form while having sex, but since she didn't do that, it seems as if she wants to basically attack the guy while scaring the shit out of him. So, he needs to be cleaned and a long prayer needs to be said to even get him to be remotely safe, due to the violent manner upon how this witch wants to have sex with him. I got to see the guy at 7. I expected him to be an older guy, someone who was a farm worker. The stereotype of who would believe in witches and demons. He was young, about my age, maybe 20, 22? He looked nervous and uneasy. Of course, Grandma didn't tell him the severity of what it all meant. Nor did she tell him what the witch probably wanted. But I got the feeling the guy somehow knew. I wasn't allowed to watch, but after I did hear her say that he shouldn't stay at his house and should sleep with family for a few days. That's all coming from what the grandma told me, what I heard and what I seen. The guy's face really got me. I've never seen someone so uneasy before. Almost as if he knew he was going to die, and he didn't know what to do. You could tell he hadn't gotten any sleep and that he was not going to for a while.
This happened the first time I went to Mexico. I was drinking at the house we were staying at with two of my brother-in-laws and one of their friends all call F. We were just shooting the shit until one of them mentioned seeing a dark bird sitting on a low branch of a small tree staring him down as he was walking home the other day. He said it while looking at the ground and he said it in a serious tone. Everyone got a bit quiet. I didn't really understand what was so important about it, so I asked. Maybe I had misunderstood what he was saying. F said it was a bad sign. He said it could have been a witch or a bad spirit marking him. I didn't really believe in that stuff, so I asked more questions. In Mexico, seeing a dark bird was a bad thing, but having it be close to you and stare you down was even worse. So, the guys told him to go to a good witch tomorrow to get cured just in case. He agreed and we kept drinking and having a good time. The day after that we were supposed to hang out and butcher a pig together, but F never showed. One of the guys left to check on his house and he wasn't there. Later on the day we learned that he was in the hospital and he wasn't going to be back until tomorrow. When F got back, we went over to visit and see if he was okay. He looked as if he had been in a bad fight and had bandages all over his arms and head and legs, even his torso. We asked if he got robbed or something. He didn't want to talk about it. He just said he had to see the witch lady to get cured. We asked him what all happened to him. We thought somebody jumped him and we were going to find them and fuck their shit up. After a bit of pressuring him he said, "You won't believe me, I fought a bird." We just looked at him kind of odd, we thought he was cracking a joke. He said that night we were drinking on his way home he was being followed by a black bird. It kind of spooked him but nothing too bad. When he got to his house as he was making dinner, he heard rustling on his backyard, so he went outside to see what was what. He steps outside and sees a tall bulky figure under his orange tree which he thought was someone trying to steal some oranges. So he walks over to confront him, and he notices the figure shines a little on the light, says it was like a man-sized bird, just staring at him from under the tree. F tells me he is paralyzed with fear at this point. He tells us he thought he was having a nightmare, but when the cold of the wind hit his face, he realized he wasn't dreaming. Then the figure somehow kicked his chest and started scratching him and pecking at him. I see his stitches, they looked long as fuck. He said he fought it as best he could, but he fainted when he felt so much of his blood hit his face when he was trying to cover up. He tells me the pecks felt as if he was being kicked by a horse. I think he fainted out of panic. His wife found him outside when she got home, all cut up and bruised, took him to the hospital, and when F came to, he instructed her to leave to her mom's house until he was cured. That was the first thing I ever experienced there. I didn't believe it at the time. It spooked me, but I didn't really know much about Mexico back then. Now I don't dare talk about that stuff while I'm there. It's always in the faces. When someone says they experienced something, you really don't believe it until you look in their eyes and you see that helplessness inside. It's as if they know you won't believe them, as if they were alone because nobody would ever believe them. Scared shitless and with nobody to tell this stuff to. Nobody that would actually believe them. That face of helplessness. Fuck that.
Not really scary, but definitely one of the most dangerous situations I've been in. I was about 16 and I lived in Bandera, Texas. One day 2 buddies and myself decided to explore all the drier out riverbeds in our area. It took us maybe an hour to reach the lake. After arriving, we decided to fuck with some out-of-towners we saw. Pretending we were backwoods rednecks, we walked up to them and tried to freak them out. After several minutes with no reaction, we decided we'd try to walk all the way around the lake. Fast forward 6 hours, we found some old lake houses tucked into a cover. We didn't see anyone home, so we spend a few hours jumping off their houses into the lake. We get bored, then start walking up a nearby hill into the woods. After about 45 minutes we're fucking lost. We eventually stumble upon a few trailer homes deep in the woods. Now this is where it gets dangerous. All the houses have the typical tin foil over the windows like you'd expect in a tweaker's house, but this was different. Just the state that everything in the surrounding area was in, you could tell these people weren't just smoking meth, they were cooking, and they definitely didn't want to be fucked with. Of course, being the 16-year-old kids, we were at the time this didn't register. I walked up to the most decent looking house and knocked on door and knocked a few times, waited a few minutes, then knocked again. This time I was greeted with the muzzle of a shotgun. I nearly pissed myself, and the guy asked me what I wanted, so I explained the situation and he told us to fuck off his property. Long story short, we found a road 2 miles out and a few hours later we were back in town. Definitely learned my lesson about knocking in meth heads' doors.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.